by whom, but it was purchased for just $1 million,
Oh, no.
No.
$10 million.
About 14.
And
10 and a half is what.
the developer came up with a proposal which involved enlarging two of the lots and allowed various improvements in the lots for construction. It'd be absolutely perfect if you buy it. If you can buy that property and complete the transaction, I've been over that property a lot of times because of the fact it was in front of the planning board. They decided I could rush in here and take a shot at all of you and say, buy that baby as fast as you can.
Is it a done deal? Is it a done deal?
Develop it
It's
into an asset. Thank you very
all
much.
right. Thanks, Warren. Thanks for the
Thanks,
support.
Warren.
Thank you.
Can I go home now?
You can go home now. Yeah.
It's
It's close to, the town has a public hearing on it, and to, there's an offer, there's an acceptance, it just has to get approved. So our goal will be to develop a plan for the use of the property. The tennis courts that your buddy was talking about
That's nice.
would be an excellent place to locate
Yeah, that's a
tennis
great
courts
idea.
over there. And the soils are not good for farming, and it's really an opportunity to clean up. Our grandkids can go play there, Bill. There you go.
I don't think I can afford to live here anymore.
That's right.
That's a good
That's
point.
true. That's true. So, but, yeah. So anyone else from the public who'd like to speak? Okay. We have one board presentation. Bob Foxen from Michael Gray. Yeah.
Can people see that?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
You see that, it's pretty good on the screen.
It's not focused.
It's actually better on the
Better on the
TV
screen than it is there, so.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
good.
you can see it on the
Yeah,
screen after all.
That's funny. Okay,
Oh, that's better, thank
Yeah,
you,
keep
Jerome.
going.
There you go.
There you go.
And then, how do I advance it?
Do you have a
There
remote?
should be remote in the back there.
There's something laying on the table behind the computer. You don't know?
that's the mouse there.
Not-
Yeah.
All right.
You're not advancing it on the laptop, or?
I could do that, I guess.
I think they usually do it off of there.
Yeah. There you go.
There, okay, I'm all
Okay.
set.
Yeah, good.
Great,
Okay.
thank you for your patience.
Hey, no problem. Just want you to, yeah.
Okay, let's try to make this work.
Okay.
My name is Bob Foxen, and I'm the developer and project manager for the microgrid project for Southampton. And before I start, I guess I just should ask, I don't know how much background anybody here has about the project and.
Well, the mayor is quite familiar, but I'm not sure if the rest of the board knows, so.
I don't know anything.
I don't know
So
the
I
background.
really
Why don't we,
don't-
because it's being actually televised, so why don't we just assume nobody knows anything?
Okay.
And in that way, it gives us a great opportunity to educate the public and say,
Sure.
you're gonna watch this.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
So, so I'm going to explain to everybody what the microgrid project involves, and how it can benefit the village of Southampton and the town of Southampton as well. That's really the purpose of being here, and I'd also like to discuss where we are and what we need to do next to keep the project moving forward. I want to talk about the benefits of the project. I'm going to explain what is involved and some of the technical details, and then, as I say, what happens next and what action items are required. The first slide, I thought it would be good to give a little context on exactly what do we mean by a microgrid. And this is a definition from Google search. It says a microgrid is a discrete energy system consisting of a number of distributed energy sources and loads, meaning users, energy users, that are capable, and here's really the key, It can operate either in parallel with the grid, in other words, tied into the main grid, or it can isolate from the main grid. So what I tell people, my first experience with a microgrid was, and many of you probably had this experience and didn't call it this, was during Hurricane Sandy when my power was out of my house. So what I had to do was I had to go buy a generator, which I was lucky to find. Actually, I found the generator outside of Boston, and I drove it down to Long Island. I live in Garden City, and I got an electrician, and we plugged it into the house. And I was already well, actually, we weren't separated from the grid. I had to have an electrician come over and isolate my house from the grid, and then I had to go stand in line to buy gasoline to fill up the generator and turn the generator on, and I could only run a few of the lights in the house, and my wife couldn't turn on the hairdryer. So, and we would
Priorities.
also, exactly. So, and we could only run it about 2 hours a day because we didn't have enough fuel, and then I had to go wait in lines for gasoline for the next day. So, and it's kind of a good example though, because people can relate to it. You could also notice when you turned on the microwave, you could hear the diesel engine, or not the diesel engine, but the generator running extra hard. So if we turned on the microwave and the hairdryer at the same time, then the thing would trip out. So what that was telling us is that we had to balance the load and the generating capacity at all times, or else the system would trip out. So really the microgrid we're going to talk about here is really similar to that, it's just bigger. We'll talk about exactly what that means in a minute. So a microgrid could really be defined to be a small unit, like my house, or it could be defined to be a much larger area, like, say, all of downtown Village of Southampton. And so, or it could be maybe two buildings together, say like the hospital, and they're not really together, but the hospital and the high school. It could be, so you can really define it however you want. And so part of the challenge for the project that we had here was to figure out, well, how do we want to define the scope of the microgrid? And when we started out in Southampton, we started thinking, originally it was really going to be the hospital and maybe one or two buildings that were really close by. And it kind of expanded, and I think by expanding it, and you'll see in a minute, there's a lot more benefit to the village. So what's the purpose of the project? There's a few important purposes. One is, as I mentioned, this was really an offshoot of Hurricane Sandy. New York State decided they really couldn't afford and didn't want to have, for a variety of reasons, outages, massive outages like they did before. So they want to improve the reliability of the grid. The second purpose of this project is to reduce costs. And then the third purpose is to, especially in the South Fork, this is a little bit unique out here, as most of you know, I'm sure, there's significant projected peak power shortages. So the microgrid will also help to some extent to address some of those peak power shortages. But it's important to keep in mind the reliability part of it. That's really the first and foremost part of it, because it affects the type of generation that will really serve the purpose. So how does this all get funded? Governor Cuomo initiated a program through what's called NYSERDA. NYSERDA is New York State Energy Research Development Authority, and it's a grant program consisting of 3 stages. Stage 1, which is where we're just finishing up now, was a grant of $100,000 to do a feasibility study. Stage 2 is a $1 million grant for design and business development, project development work and financing. And then stage 3 is $7 million for implementation. And you can see the number of projects at each stage gets less and less, so it's a competitive process. First stage, there were over 80 projects that were picked, about 14 on Long Island. The second stage expected to be about 10 projects statewide, and about, I'd say of that 10, probably 5 on Long Island. It's not exactly clear how many they're going to pick in each area. And then the 7 going forward, there'll probably be 3 or 4 on Long Island. That's kind of the expectation. Long Island is kind of a center of this, obviously, because we're so exposed to storm impacts. The next couple of slides talk about some of the benefits for the different stakeholders. So Southampton Village is obviously one of the key stakeholders. And the benefit for the village, as I mentioned before, it would maintain power during any grid outages. So even if the grid is out in other areas of the South Fork, the project is designed to keep power on in the downtown area and for certain critical facilities that are important to everybody, such as the hospital and Village Hall and fire department and so on. Southampton Town, similar benefits, keep power on for certain critical facilities like the Town Hall, Southampton Hospital I mentioned. PSEG Long Island benefits because it helps them address their peak load issues. National Grid benefits because they'll have new customers for gas supply, and I'll explain why that would be in a minute. The project includes some new cogeneration systems for the hospital and another gas-fired project as well, so that it provides really a new customer for National Grid. The Suffolk County residents benefit because you keep the hospital intact, assure greater reliability for energy reliability for the hospital, as well as keeping other key facilities in the village of Southampton, which is kind of the hub of the South Fork operating. And the environment benefits too, because by providing some gas-fired generation as part of this project, and some solar as well, you'll actually reduce the need to dispatch the existing diesel-fired plant that exists in the village. Or I don't know if it's in the village or just on the outskirts of the village, just it's the outskirts of the village, it's just right nearby.
It's in the village, yeah.
It's in the
It's in the village. So, and as you can imagine, that plant has a lot worse emissions than, say, a new cogeneration or a new gas-fired plant. I just want to give you an idea of what some of the critical loads are. We were able to get a lot of detailed information in terms of electric use for most of the major critical facilities in the village. So Town Hall, you can see, has a peak load of 149 kilowatts. Village Hall, pretty small, 16 kilowatts. Police Department, and so on and so forth. You can see the hospital on this table is by far the largest, about 1,500 kilowatts peak load. And you can see the energy use, kilowatt hours per year, that is, in the middle column. These are the other critical facilities, if you will, and then down at the bottom, the second to last row, it says extra feeder load. And what that includes is all of these small commercial establishments and residences that are kind of within downtown, the downtown part of the village. So that adds up to, out of close to 6 megawatts total, or 5,835 kilowatts, that adds up to 2,500, say, kilowatts. So it's what, 40% of the total, just coming from accumulation of a lot of these smaller loads. So our goal is to be able to not only address these larger critical facilities, but also to keep the lights on for all the smaller activities. And I'm going to show you the map in a second how this all lays out. You'll see how the circuits tie together and where each of these facilities are. This slide shows what are called distributed energy resources. These are the sources of energy for the microgrid. So it includes a number of key things. One is a new CCHP, is combined cooling, heat, and power system for the hospital. It's called, or cogeneration, if people are familiar with that term. We're proposing, now let me back up a second, just to sort of explain the logic here. Remember before with my example at home, if I don't have supply and demand in balance at all times, then the system will trip out. So on the previous slides where we explained showed what the loads were, we have 5,800 kilowatts. So we have, at peak load. So what we had to do was make sure we have 5,800 kilowatts of supply at peak load. Because we want to make sure that if everything is up, if all the loads are functioning at peak, that the supply is also at peak. So now this doesn't add up to 5.8 because the microgrid also includes certain existing backup diesels. such as at the hospital. The hospital has some backup diesels, I think the high school has some backup diesels. So if we take a combination of all the backup diesels plus the new energy resources, we get to the 5.8 megawatts. So go back to the new DERs. We have a new reciprocating engine, and I'll talk to you a little bit where we're thinking that could go. That would be gas-fired. There is enough gas, we were told from National Grid, to supply the cogen system and the new gas-fired system. So, and to give you an idea, 2 megawatts, I think the diesel system is probably 10 or 13 megawatts. So this is, we're talking about relatively small systems that would be, you know, fit in a container that is maybe 50 feet long by 15 feet wide, something like that. It would be right inside of a shipping container. You know, it would fit in this part of the room where you guys are sitting, essentially. So it's a small gas-fired unit.
Does that sit above ground or can that be buried?
I suppose you could bury it, but, you know.
With a grate over it?
Yeah, you could do that. You gotta have exhaust and you gotta
Yeah,
keep
you
it
have to
cool,
have
and it'd be a
exhaust.
lot more expensive to do that. But yeah, you could bury it.
Are they noisy?
Well, you'd have it all sound attenuated, so you can set it up so you're not gonna hear anything. You know, you can always engineer around the noise. It'd be easier to engineer around the noise than to bury it, though. So let's see. The other thing it has is a battery, and the battery does a couple things. Our idea is that the battery would be located at the water supply facility on North Prospect Street, and it would do 2 things. From the standpoint of Suffolk County Water Authority, they like most other large commercial loads, have what are called demand charges, which are charges that are based on the peak energy use. So when they have to turn their pumps on in the summer to fill the tank during the day, they get hit with demand charges. So what would happen here is the battery would go on, so they wouldn't draw peak power from the grid. They would turn on the battery, and the battery would essentially shave the peak from the standpoint of the grid, if we follow that. So essentially it's a peak shaving system when the grid is up and running. And when the grid is out, what would happen is the battery helps balance the supply and demand, because the battery can cycle up and down very, very quickly. So if some load comes up quickly when you're in microgrid mode and you're isolated from the grid, the battery can quickly balance the supply and demand very rapidly. We have 300 kilowatts of new solar energy at the elementary school. At least that's the current proposed location. And then we would also potentially have 150 kilowatts of cogeneration at Town Hall as well. Plus, as I mentioned, the existing diesels that would back this up. So this map here shows, it's a circuit map of the downtown area. And the question that arises is, well, how do you tie this all together and how do you isolate the microgrid? So what you're seeing, the blue and the pink lines are essentially the existing PSEG Long Island feeders. Feeders meaning distribution lines. So these are existing above ground lines. There's budget in the project that would harden those lines so that they'd be resistant to storm impacts. There's not enough budget in the project to bury the lines, which I know people would probably like. So the lines would basically remain the same as they are now. The other thing that's included here is there are a number of switches. So if you look kind of in the lower right-hand corner, you see S8, for example. And then in the upper left-hand corner, you see S9 or S4, you see a number of switches. So what happens is when the macrogrid is functioning, those switches stay closed. And so the microgrid is functioning in parallel, as I said before, with the macrogrid. So now imagine you have a storm and the grid goes down. What happens is that all those switches automatically open up. And so the microgrid, which is the feeders you're looking at there, the microgrid then is charged solely with the new DERs and the existing backup diesels. So it would run off of those new generation sources. You can also see on here where the critical facilities are located. One I didn't identify is there's a gas station up to the right, just kind of northeast of the fire department. I forget the name of the gas station up there, but from my personal experience waiting on lines at gas stations, I knew it was important to keep that open. And you can also see we've got the library, the police department, village hall, ambulance, elementary school, hospital obviously, and water authority and Department of Public Works are kind of the critical facilities. But also all the commercial establishments and residences that are within this area would be essentially assured of power during an outage. I think that's. Oh, here's what I wanted to mention that affects the village. One of the things that would have to be decided is the location of the 2 megawatts of electric only. So this has not been finally nailed down yet. That we're just at a feasibility study stage right now. But our initial thought, which Steve questioned and I realize may not be viable, our initial thought was to try to put it at the Department of Public Works because it's near the substation and we can get gas there. I know that site is really tight, so even for a fairly small shipping container, there may not really be room there. Another possible location was behind the police department. There could be room, and that would be a viable location from the standpoint of the microgrid. So in the stage 2 process, if we get picked, that would be one decision that people would have to make is, where do you want to have where would you want to have this 2 megawatts of electric? That system, by the way, would probably run, based on our current forecasts, maybe 1,000 hours a year, something on that order. It wouldn't dispatch all the time. It would really be more inclined to dispatch during peak load periods for primarily economic reasons. But again, don't forget, as I said before, that's 1,000 hours less that diesel plant is going to.
So what you're really trying to do is you're trying to achieve a location within that microgrid area that you've already identified.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, I could add this too. There's nothing etched in stone about that particular configuration. But, in going back and forth quite a bit, this is kind of where this ended up now, and it's likely to be tweaked and modified to some degree based on just engineering and economics and also input from the community and the town.
I mean, the substation that PSE&G has, it's right on West Prospect Street.
Right.
And they have a lot of property associated with that. They didn't know what, is there opportunities you could place it on that property right there?
Absolutely.
It's right along the railroad track. And,
I mean, that's a good location for it.
Yeah.
We would just have to negotiate with PSEG and see if they'd be willing to.
Yeah, well, I mean, it benefits them, I mean, that's,
Right.
in a lot of ways, I mean, they can't keep up with the power.
Do they own that
demands.
whole strip there? Who owns
Sure
it?
they do.
Pretty much.
They have a lot of property there. Yeah, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4 houses on the north side of West Prospect Street between the PSC&G property and the water tower. I know that because one of them is my son, so,
Okay.
yeah.
And they're mostly
But,
close to the water tower.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually better over there than it is at DPW because you're right next to the substation.
It's right next to the
Yeah, right,
substation.
right.
I mean, it really, and if you look at the load right here, and I mean, it's just one proposal after, I think, might even strengthen the grant proposal too, as being right on the same property with these guys.
Well, it probably would. It would reduce the cost.
Yeah.
And by the way, one thing I didn't mention, I'm going to get to it in a second, is the evaluation to go to stage 2 is based on a cost-benefit analysis that is done by a third party consultant in NYSERDA. So that would increase your benefit cost
Yeah.
ratio by doing that.
But if we could get in with those guys and just say, look, I mean, they really they've got a lot of empty property right there. It's consistently an area where there's dumping that goes on, and a few other things and stuff. So it would be a benefit to the community, and it would also be a benefit to the grid. It's right next to the substation too, so, yeah.
Yeah, logically, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't support it, so, especially if they knew the community
That's
was
the reason
behind
why
it.
they'll say no.
Yeah, right.
You use that key word logic around there, so, yeah.
Let's see, this is a preliminary listing of sources and uses of funds. As you can see, the total project cost is a little under $12 million. That includes about $6 million for the cogeneration, $4 for the electric generation, $800 for the solar, $500 for the battery, and then $700 for distribution and controls. How it gets funded is open for discussion. Our assumption in this was that it would be funded by private funds plus the NYSERDA grant funding. It wouldn't be funded by the village or the town unless people in the village town decided they wanted to own and operate it. But we're sort of assuming they didn't want to have to provide any of the capital. So it would be, this is kind of a breakdown of what we're envisioning. And there's a couple of things that are changed. That NYSERDA, I should just say this, the NYSERDA CHP funding would not be available, but there is going to be a new similar program from PSEG Long Island, so that would be replaced by a grant from PSEG Long Island, assuming it qualifies. One of the issues I didn't mention is the possibility of the hospital moving. I don't know if people are familiar with what's going on with that.
We've heard about it.
Yeah, okay. And so we decided, we didn't know how to account for that variable, so we thought the best thing to do was just, we're going to treat the feasibility study like it's staying there, and then when we get to stage 3, when people have to make firm commitments, then we'll deal with it.
What I would say is that I think it's a long time away before the hospital makes a move, and that and no matter what happens, that structure is still going to be there, and that their plans are to do a variety of different things that they can do on that property.
That's kind of what we thought too, and that was the case we made in our report too, that even if the hospital itself moves some of the services, there's going to be something going on there.
Yeah.
So you're still going to have a similar load.
Yeah. So,
I have a question.
Sure.
Are we-
Yeah.
you were gonna move
There's a
on?
couple more things that you should
Sure.
look at. Okay, so one of the key criteria for going to stage 2, as I mentioned, is the results of the cost-benefit analysis. So here are the results, and this is spit out by a company called Industrial Economics. They're based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So just point you to the first row going across where it says net benefits, present value. So there were 2 scenarios that they evaluated. And the difference in the 2 scenarios is whether or not what they call transmission deferral benefits are considered. And as you probably know, PSEG has done an analysis, and they have determined that in order to meet the peak loads in the South Fork, either new transmission lines are required or new peaking power. So there was an estimate that they came up with that new peaking power was going to cost, if they had, new transmission lines would cost $300 million to install. So a project like this will either defer either some of the transmission lines or delay the transmission lines, or defer some of the peak power that would be provided. So if they consider the benefit of transmission deferral, that's scenario 1B. So if we consider the benefits that this project provides for deferring that transmission, the net benefit is $24 million. And if you don't consider that, the net benefit is $3.8 million. So we're kind of lobbying to get NYSERDA, when they evaluate the projects for stage 2, to be sure that they take that into account. And it's really kind of a critical factor, because if just based on the scores that the other projects are getting, if the net benefit of this project is considered to be 3.8, I think our chances of getting to stage 2 are tough. But I think if they look at it from the other standpoint, I think you have a really good chance of going on to the next stage. What happens next? We're right now actually, at least in the early stages, of preparing a proposal for stage 2. This is based on preliminary positive input we got from the town and the town board. It's a very complicated undertaking. I should have mentioned in the beginning, our partners on this, in addition to my company, is GE has an energy consulting group, so we're working with GE Energy Consulting, and then a large engineering firm, which I can't publicly tell you who that is yet, because we're just sort of finalizing our deal with them. But there's another large engineering firm with myself and with GE that would be doing the proposal. That's due October 12th, so we have a lot of work to do between now and then. And what we would like to ask the board for would be your support. I think in stage 1 we got a letter of support from the village, essentially saying we support Global Commons. Well, actually it was a little different because the town retained us. That's right, it was different. So the way we're working in stage 2 is we're getting a letter of support from the town saying we support Global Commons' effort to proceed with stage 2. And we'd like to get a similar letter, if we could, from the village that would, it's a one-page letter, offering that support. It's the same process. I should have mentioned that we're also doing similar studies in Greenport and Port Jefferson, essentially the same team and the same process. So we have letters of support that those go into our proposal, so that NYSERDA knows that the stakeholders, key stakeholders like you guys, are supportive of the project. Yeah. So that's pretty much the end.
No, I'm still a little confused as to how this really works. And my thought, and I don't know, I'm not an engineer, so I'm trying to figure it out. So if you, basically this is like a, what's the thing you put next to your house? You just mentioned.
Generator?
A generator, but it's a very large generator, is that correct? That would take over peak loads when PSE&G can't do it? Is that
Well, okay,
correct?
so 2 things. So there's going to be 2 scenarios. One is on normal days when the grid's up and running. So on normal days when the grid's up and running, these generation units that we're putting in, most of them are going to operate at least some of the time. So say for the hospital, the cogen system there would operate 95% of the time. And that'll displace energy that the hospital will be buying from the grid. It'll also, because it produces heat, they'll use the heat from the cogen system, so they won't have to burn as much fuel in their boilers. So that system will run all the time. The electric-only system during normal times will only run when it makes economic sense to run. So, and just looking at the historic data of, most people don't know this, but the energy price varies about every 5 minutes, I think. So every few minutes, that generator will go on or off depending on the market value of power. And it should be in the neighborhood of 500 to 1,000 hours a year that plant would run. Same with the batteries would turn on, as I mentioned before, when to offset that pumping. Now, if the grid goes down,
That's the question.
okay, if the grid goes down, then those switches would never open up, and all of those units would basically operate most of the time. And the reason I don't say all the time is because all of the loads within the microgrid aren't always 100%. So at night, those loads might be 40 or 50% of what they are at peak. So if those loads are all operating at peak, all those supply resources would be 100%. But if, at night, some of those will shut down and some of them would be operating. So,
So let's discuss a hurricane. So we have a hurricane, and we have telephone poles that have gone down, electricity's turned off because the poles are down. How does it work?
it's not gonna work.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and so I said, we do have, this is not a 100% fail-safe system.
Right.
We do have substantial budget really for hardening of the existing above-ground lines, but we've not tried to budget out, it just would be too expensive to
This is a backup system.
put everything
so
underground,
that-
right?
This is a backup system so that we don't have brownouts.
Well, it's a backup system, so a lot of times if you have an outage from a hurricane, remember the outage is somewhere miles from here. It's in a transmission line to the west of here. So you might have, more likely, all these local distribution lines. A lot of the local distribution lines don't have a lot of trees around them. It's usually trees falling on the poles, it's not the poles falling down because of the wind. So, but it's not 100% fail-safe. Unless you buried all the wires. But then you're really talking about a whole different level of undertaking.
Now, there was a general discussion that as the grid moves east, as the power moves east, there's a lower power generation heading east. And there was a concept of using these small generators to boost the power grid altogether. I mean, is that still in there, or are they only going to be on when there's demand?
Well, let's see, I'm not sure if I'm following, but they're separate from this project.
In other words, those units that you would install would put power back into the electrical system.
That's right, but most of that power, it'll be power that's used on the east end, but that doesn't really help Montauk very much.
Right.
Montauk is still going to have to deal with its own localized systems, because if you think of it like a pipe, the pipe is just not going to be big enough to get the extra power from here even out to Montauk during that really high peak period. So, but there are separate projects that people are looking at to provide local generation out in Montauk or Amagansett to meet the needs out there.
So then the on and off would just do this grid here. It's,
Right, this is really, now it does help to some degree, it helps the east, further east to some degree, but it's primarily for the Southampton load pocket.
Well,
They're going to need to deal with their own things separately.
it's for this facility that you pretty much mapped out.
Correct.
It wouldn't cover the whole.
And the downtown area, yeah.
So this is not, just so I'm clear what you were just saying, Nancy, this is not a backup generator in the event of a storm. Because if we're losing main power, this is going out as well.
No, this would be a backup generator for a storm in Southampton.
And so, yeah.
Yes.
So it's both as a backup then, and to
And to
supplement,
reduce cost,
and supplement
and it will reduce cost,
normal peak time.
right. For people that are participating in the microgrid, it will reduce cost during normal operating conditions too.
How is the
How much
backup
do you need
equipment?
for the facility? How much space do you need?
Well, as I say, for the, just roughly speaking, I'd say like 50 feet by 12 feet, something like that.
To do all of that area?
No,
Or
for the
just-
2 megawatt,
Yeah.
Right.
for the generation system.
So you need several of those in several different locations?
Well, not several really. We need one other similar size facility for the hospital, similar size footprint for the hospital. And then the battery, oh gosh, the battery is probably, I'm going to say roughly maybe 30 feet by 30 feet, something like that. It's much smaller, 20 by 20, something like that. It's pretty small installation.
But the question I asked before was if the macro grid is down, let's say the electricity's all off in the village,
Okay.
you said this doesn't work.
No, it does work there.
Oh, it does work.
That's why I asked that
Well,
again.
no,
Yeah, I know.
When I say it doesn't,
No, you're talking about apples and oranges.
So what we're talking about here is a cogeneration plant that generates, so instead of the power being generated by the natural gas or the diesel power plant or solar panels, this is another source of power.
Right.
So what that is, if the tree falls, it knocks the power line down and it disconnected, and so a house over here can't get from the power production plant here. That doesn't matter where the power is generated from. So it's still, it's not gonna get to that point.
Yeah, I know what you're
Yeah.
referring, I did say, if
Yeah,
the main grid is down, and you have a tree that falls on a distribution line in the village, then at least part of that microgrid is not gonna be working.
right.
So it's not fail-safe, but if the macrogrid is down because the transmission line 10 miles west of here is out, then the microgrid would stay functioning.
So there's the back.
Yeah. So, but it's not, the reason I say it's not 100% is because if you have a transmission line down 10 miles from here, and then you also have a tree down
Right.
on Main
Yeah.
Street that's knocking out a line, then
Yeah.
part of you is gonna be down too.
How many residents can be covered by this? And it says commercial establishments and residences.
I think we figured a couple of hundred residences that were within, we made an estimate of that are within that scope of the microgrid.
We're all going to Zach's house.
I was gonna
He's
say-
right.
say, how's that-
Right.
is that
Well,
like
we're
drawing
not
the
that
straw?
far either.
I know.
We're not that far,
Oh, so it'd be based on.
nor is
city.
Michael,
Okay.
nor, we're not either, so.
So I gotta figure out which house I'm gonna go to.
Go to the dog park.
There you go.
That's always open.
That would be
Yeah.
lit.
Um, So, explain the cost benefits
There's a
to
doghouse there.
all of these buildings that will be affected by this. I mean, is it a cost benefit to this, or, I know you're gonna be using natural gas.
Yeah.
Okay.
So who pays, how do you get paid?
Yeah, that's the
Okay,
question.
so, a couple of ways. One is the hospital would pay, let's assume that there's a project company. There's two scenarios for that. That could be a nonprofit, which is one possibility, or it could be a for-profit. But it's going to be a separate entity that's separately financed. So it varies depending on whether the generator is behind the meter or in front of the meter. By behind the meter, I mean, say, the cogeneration system at the hospital. In that case, what we would propose to the hospital is, they would all have to accept this, where we would sell them electricity for a certain price, and we'd sell them heat, our thermal product. And we would negotiate a price that presumably would be a certain percentage less than what they currently pay PSEG. And
Can I just ask you how you can assure it'd be less though? I mean, what are you based on that?
well, we know what they pay PSEG
Okay.
for starters, because we have their bills. And we know what gas costs, and we know what it costs to operate the cogen plant, and so we know the capital operating costs.
But you're still at the mercy of certain, commodities and.
Well, yes and no, because remember, so let's say gas prices go up, so that we have a higher fuel price,
They go up for them too.
they go for them too, right? So, and we would probably have to peg our contract so that it has some correlation to the price of fuel, so that we don't get squeezed. And they should be okay with that, assuming that they believe what you said, that if the gas price goes up, they're gonna have to pay more. And then for the 2 megawatt generator, that would just sell on a merchant basis to the, what's called the New York ISO, New York Independent System Operator. And that would economically dispatch to individual, economically dispatch when the market price is higher than the variable operating price. It's a little more complicated than that, but I could spare you all the gory details. But I'd be happy to go into it if you wanted to know. I should add this too. There will be opportunities for all the smaller participants in the microgrid to buy energy from the microgrid company, just like you would buy from an ESCO?
Wouldn't they have to put something behind their meter then?
No, no. So in other words, right now, you have a choice. Do you know what an ESCO is?
Yeah.
So right now, you can buy from an ESCO or you can buy from National Grid, or from PSEG Long Island. So instead of buying from the ESCO, you could, when we're planning on doing this, you could buy the energy from the microgrid generator.
If it's in your area.
Well, from this one.
Oh.
So that, and that's how we're envisioning that the individual local users would be able to reduce their cost, even if they don't have a generator behind their meter.
Okay, so what you need from us is a letter of support.
Correct.
And so, you got one from the town.
Correct.
I'm a strong believer, I think this is something we definitely should support. How do you guys feel about this?
Yeah,
I'm still a little confused
the
as
mechanics
to how
and the
that
cost of them a
works.
little, but it's still worth
If the person
supporting.
wants to have you or
Just how
this
you-
company represent them, and they decide that they are going to use this product, how do you calculate that? I mean, how do you know what their usage is?
Well, they're
if
gonna have a
it's-
meter.
if there's- Oh, they will have a meter.
Oh, yeah.
That was my question.
Yeah, oh yeah, they'll have a meter, they have a meter now,
Right.
right? So they know how many kilowatt hours they're using now, so they would.
They'll have a second
so-
meter then?
No, just, they'll use
Oh,
the
the
regular
same
meter.
one?
So instead of buying from PSEG, you're buying from them at a lower rate.
I guess that's the one thing I'm trying to figure out, how you can continuously and perpetually assure you're gonna be cheaper than that. That's, I guess, the only thing I don't really understand yet, but I'm not worried about supporting it without knowing that. Just because you're a competitive price, basically you're an alternative source of energy.
It's really because our system, like, a cogeneration system has something like 60+% efficiency, and the old PSEG units that it's competing against are probably 30-35% efficiency.
Okay, so because of modern.
So we have much more efficient units, and the fuel price is going to be the same, right?
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
your supply is still the same as they're
Right,
getting it
right,
from.
right, right.
So your difference is you're using modernized equipment
Right.
for more efficient.
And what makes it even easier with PSEG, if you will, is their equipment is old and archaic.
But you still have the ability to dictate your pricing schedule going forward, just like any utility.
Well, we would have contract with them, that we would have to.
That's.
I mean, the advantage PSEG has over a new facility is all their capital is written off, or at least some of their capital is written off. So we have to have revenue to cover the new capital. But in terms of efficiency, a new cogen is going to be much more efficient than most of the facilities. There's really one facility PSEG has that's efficient, which is Caithness and Yaphank. But that's only 350 megawatts, and I forget what percentage that is of the total load on Long Island, but that's the only really highly efficient power plant in Long Island.
Any other?
I think it's very interesting.
All right.
It's very interesting.
Appreciate you coming tonight and doing a presentation.
Thank you.
It's good to hear something that the public to get an opportunity to see this, realize the positive this is to the community and stuff. So, okay, so we'll get a letter.
Get a letter from Steve?
Yeah, we'll generate a letter. If there's anything you want in that letter, just we can get it to Julie and we can write it all
Yeah,
up.
draft
I
it
think
and
you
send
wrote
it
a
to
letter,
you.
didn't you write a letter for stage one?
No, I think that came out of the town sponsor.
Okay. I'll send you an example.
Yeah.
And then
That'd be great.
That'd be good.
I'm just gonna
write
say
something
this.
up and stuff. Okay.
Okay, great, thanks very much.
All right,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you for your time, thank you.
Okay. Got the ongoing public hearing on North Sea Road rezoning. At the last meeting, we had the Nelson Pope Voorhees submitted their zoning, and then we had some comments that came back from some different people, and we're gonna look at and review stuff, and we have an open public hearing, so we're gonna go, I know Mr. Bennett wants to speak. Come on up.
Thank you. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to speak. John Bennett from Southampton. I noticed that the Planning Commission did approve the North Sea Windmill Lane Office Business District study. Some comments, but none of them truly seem to have any negative effect on the substance of it. So that was good. I do sort of continue to look at this study as an opportunity, being at the very end of it, and seeing what you travel through now to get to the village. I do think you have to take care that this doesn't become what I've been referring to as a low-end rental ghetto. That's really important, and I would ask you to take care with the, with the allowable uses and the way that the special exception approvals would be implemented. But it does appear that the office district doesn't have enough flexibility. Perhaps you could take a look at some of the Hamlet office or Hamlet business uses in the town, because that's been, and as well take a look at some of the architectural and design guidelines. I think you really want to do that. If you look in the West Hampton Beach Code, they actually have elevations, that show what kind of architectural design guidelines that you have. And the attempt is to make it look, sort of like Job's Lane and Main Street look. So I think that's a critical element of it.
It's a Hamlet commercial zone that they have.
Yeah. And I think that, I've seen some of the way that's been implemented, and it's done quite well. But I think, I understand the concerns that some of the people who are rightfully concerned about this, because, if it's not handled and the correct way, that I think you could end up with the contrary of what you're trying to do, which is to make that entrance to the village as nice as Hill Street is and North Main Street is. But I do think you have to incentivize. One of the other things I was thinking about is maybe some of the pre-existing non-conforming uses there, you allow them to expand with zoning board of appeals approval and your approval by more than 50%. I don't know, you have to take into account some of the things. But certainly, it doesn't appear that office district is incentivizing people. So, again, I think it's an opportunity. You have to look at it and make sure that you do it in a controlled way, but nevertheless give the owners there some more incentive to develop. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else from the public would like to make comment to this? Board members, Bill?
Just talking to Nancy and Michael before, something that occurred to me, and I met with Steve earlier in the week, and we were looking at the maps and some of the power circles that are in this district. And one of the things that occurred to me is that where the Bridgehampton National Bank office is, which is right next to John's office, of course, I think, Steve, wasn't that 12 acres or something like that?
No, it was, I think, 2.8.
Oh, 2.8, okay. And I could imagine somebody, lots of people would love to see another grocery store in the village, but would you like to see it there? And so I was just going to say, how protected are we from something like that happening? On top of everything else, Bridgehampton National Bank has the unique situation of having two branches in our village, which I often wonder why that works and how well it works for them, from their standpoint. And so would they be incentivized to try and put something like a King Cullen in there? And in any event, Rick, I know you explained at previous meetings just how protected we are. The village board gets to.
I think the response is that it's not this is not an as-of-right use. And it's a special permit. It would have to go in front of the village board, the individual sitting there. But I think that if you were to put a grocery store in that location, then I think that, I feel pretty positive that the response would be a strong negative response would come to this board. And I think it would be a very difficult proposal to pass, you know, and that's, so I mean, I agree, I think we have to add some flexibility in there, how you do it, we get it in West Hampton's Hamlet commercial guidelines, architectural guidelines. The idea behind that is it's a transition zone that goes from residential properties into the village business district area, and it's really designed for offices and bed and breakfasts, because I just redid a property in that zone. And so the idea is it looks residential, but yet it serves a commercial purpose. And I think that's kind of some of the things that we want to see here, is that we want to see a residential feel on that street, but yet offer some commercial opportunities. And how you manage each application, you would have to go through the whole secret process, and have to look at traffic flow and waste management and on and on. So it's not an as of right of anything, but at least maybe there's other ways to incentivize property owners instead of seeing, empty overgrown lots or, dilapidated buildings or, different things. There's some ways that we could get in and incentivize property owners to do different things with their parcels. So,
Well, Nelson Public Works recommends small, 4,000 to 5,000 square feet.
yeah.
I don't think that's so small. I think that's big,
It's pretty large.
Yeah.
very large.
Yeah.
So that right there is the,
But that's part of the process. If we felt like, we didn't want to see it at 4,000 to 5,000, if we want to cut that back to 3,000,
We have the power to do it.
I mean, it's really, what this is a village business district, office district. It's a village master plan update. That we would take the master plan update, and then we go and we take it to the next step, where we go and we write the zoning changes on that. So instead of us saying, 4,000 or 5,000, we say, what we're gonna propose from a zoning change would be 3,000 or 3,500. If we wanted to put the architectural guidelines in place, we put those in
still
place.
pretty large, 3,000.
Well, not really.
Well, it isn't when you think footprint. If it has a 2-story, then it's not. But if it's a 1-story, that's
That's
big.
big.
That's really big.
Well, one of the difficulties
100
Yeah.
by 30. That's big. That's 3,000 square feet, 100 by 30.
Yeah, but nobody builds 100 by 30.
No, but
If they
you have
can.
you have to figure the width of the property. It's gonna be a lot of redevelopment here. I think part of the issue that people who are writing to us, who are hearing about this, have, sure, they would love the street to look prettier than what it is, because it really isn't that attractive right now. But I think their concern is traffic. I mean, everyone who has written to us has talked about the congestion of traffic within the village, and now we're developing a main artery coming into our community, into our downtown area, which, by the way, is struggling on its own, okay, into our area. And so we're creating more ins and outs of parking, going into a parking lot and out of a parking lot. And I think they see that as a real issue here.
Well, it is an issue.
Yeah. So that's the one thing that I have said from day one, is the traffic is an issue. Would we like to see this look prettier? Sure we would. But also, I'm very concerned about the downtown area, and I'm not buying it that, this is going to create a much more, it'll be less expensive for the mom and pops. It will never be less expensive for the mom and pops, because it's going to cost a fortune to rebuild this. So that part I'm not agreeing with. It's not gonna be less expensive than mom and pop. And I'm very concerned about the traffic, and I have to say, most of the letters that we got was all about that. And I'm also concerned about our wonderful little village struggling now, and now we're gonna have competition. Those are my concerns.
Nancy, one of the concerns that should be, and you really indirectly brought it up, is you put in a retail facility on North Sea Road. It ends up like many of the stores in our downtown business district, vacant.
Right.
Now, what are you gonna end up with in there? And it's really not the first store that goes in, because that has our overview and our desire and our points of building. It's the second and third stores that may appear in there is difficult. And you aren't sure how that's gonna grow. And you know, what we want is a nice district there that you enter the village of Southampton, and in the long term, you may have even a worse situation.
I mean, my vision for this community and for our village business district was to have a vibrant downtown area and to see the possibility of, you know, we have a lot of offices still on Main Street, and I'd like to see them go. I mean, myself included. I wouldn't mind leaving. We're reaching a point. Most of it's real estate or what's the company? Stocks and bonds or traders that really don't have to be in the middle of our village business district anymore. They could be sitting in a building somewhere else because people do everything online now. They don't really go into an office anymore. They don't even come into our office anymore. Everything's done online. So I see the migration of that eventually going out once people have really felt like they've established their name and there's still going to be advertising. I want to see our downtown little village become stronger than what it is. And, you know, when we did the village business master plan, and we had all of those people come in and do all the measuring and the 3-foot story buildings and how many feet were away and measuring the vestibules, so that if we had development on Windmill Lane and Nugent Street, it would mimic Main Street and Joe's Lane. And that was very, very important, and we had to put that in place before we would even apply for sewage treatment. And that kind of development I still am in favor of. And that's the way I want to see this village go. I don't want to see another business district taking away from our downtown area, and I think it will. And I think it will create more congestion. I'm going to say again, would I like to see it look nicer? Yes, but not if it's going to hurt our downtown area, and if it's going to prevent people from coming in because it's a more congested road. I just think there's a time and place for it, and I don't think it's right now.
Mark, am I right in thinking that there are 3 vacant parcels in this proposed district?
It's
There's
11.
one just on the north of Gene Parker. There's Mr. Robinson's parcel next to Lynch's. And then there's another small wooded parcel that's on, which I think is in this district. And I think it has a for sale sign in front of it. It's on the east side of North Main Street before you reach Bowden Square. Excuse me, it's on the west side. In any event, whatever vacant parcels, is there any thought that the Community Preservation Fund would look at any of them?
Well, the one that's on the north side of Gene Parker's office building was purchased with CPF money.
So that will stay,
That would stay.
so then there's only 2 parcels,
Right.
Bo's parcel and then this other one that.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure about the other parcel there. I think that's the one that's,
I thought it had a for sale sign on it. I'd drive by it.
is that the one that's right south of Capney?
Oh, yeah, there's one
Kate's
there.
Bake Shop, yeah. I remember there's a wooded area in there, and I don't know. I don't, I
That's
don't know
on
ownership.
Windmill Lane,
But I think
Well,
it
it's
goes
between Main
through,
Street and Winfield.
goes through.
We have to look at
Yes,
it.
yes, yeah, that's right, that's the one I was talking about.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if that's,
But I thought originally when we were having this,
Along
there was a discussion that there were really only 11 properties that we're talking about that were rezoning currently.
well, you rezone for the whole area.
I know.
You have to assume all the properties.
Yeah, that's, you have to.
Yeah,
But I think
yeah.
somehow 11 properties came up as probably the prime, but you can't just assume it's
You have
11.
to, well, you have to look and say, post office is there.
Right.
You know, you've got PSCG's property, there are municipal properties that are along there. Oh, there's the corner of Bowden Square that, you know, we own. I mean, there's some historical components right there. I mean, Bridgehampton National Bank is a historic building. You know, there's very limited opportunities or improvement for that.
Good.
So, I mean, you look at it, there are not as many properties that could be redeveloped as what we think that there are. And then there's also, several of those properties that are pre-existing non-conforming to this district now. Schmitz is a perfect example of that, you know. So
So it's Winchester.
yeah, which is a perfect example. So, but it's, I mean, obviously is, you know, I would say that the majority of this board is really not in favor of this change and stuff, so.
I wish if this
Yeah.
board would last forever, I could trust it not to screw something up, you know, that anybody, at least the
Yeah.
four of you are very sober people. Not harsh, and
It's
I
pretty
don't think we'd
depressing.
approve something that the
Right.
village itself was on fire over.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that what we need to do as individuals and a board is absorb everything that's been brought in. And, you know, there's been a lot of comment, both for and in opposition to it. We should probably close the public hearing on this now, and then come back at the next meeting or 2 meetings from now and make a decision one way or the other. Either move forward with it or put it to rest. You know, so,
So
I
I
think
have another,
Mr. Bennett brought up an interesting
you know,
concept on the pre-existing retail operations,
That's yours.
that maybe there's a way that you can allow them to increase their size and increase their profile, and still retain the rest of the,
who is that?
well, like Clam Man, and there's Tate's and so forth. Maybe there's a zoning concept that you can let them increase as pre-existing non-conforming retail operations and help beautify the area a bit, as opposed to go and develop the entire streets.
Now, I think the Clam Man is a very interesting point, because I see that as a redevelopment property.
But if I may, I'm sorry, because that is, but you have limitations in your own code as to how much you can develop. And I don't have a dog, I don't represent the owner, I don't have a dog fight or anything, but that's always been, like, I've always used the example, I'm sorry to bring it up again, McDonald's some years ago
Yeah.
wanted to add
And that's a good
20
example.
seats, and I was sitting there, I didn't representative, I said, give them the 20 seats, but tell them it's gotta make it look like the one in, you know, in Freeport, Maine, or in Nantucket or something like that, so it doesn't look like.
Yeah.
I mean, those sort of tools where if you could incentivize somebody, the existing developments, maybe take a stab at that. Maybe some sort of village attempt to, I know you guys try to do like an Esplanade there, something, you could really use some of your existing tools, expand some of your existing tools to allow it, because it's really it's you know, you see that sign, First English Settlement in New York, you know, that's, and then you go, what's going on here? You know, so I think if you gave some flexibility to your boards to work on, maybe as a first step, some of the existing uses there. And again, I can't think of any, I'm not representing anybody, I can't think of any clients on that street, but I do, as like being at the end of it, very much want to nurture it more. So,
No, it's definitely a road that needs, I don't know, I'll say it this way, a Nancy McGann touch.
Thanks.
Okay? And,
That's dirty.
no, it's really, when I think about, when I think about the village of Southampton
It's the
and
beautification one.
it's the beautification component, and people ask me about it, and I say it's Nancy.
Well,
And,
you know what, when I think about different areas, like if you go up to Nantucket, which is very much like Sag Harbor. I mean, if you're standing in the middle of Main Street, except for its fabulous cobblestone street, but if you're standing there and looking down, it looks like Sag Harbor, little side streets. And that business district is made up of mostly houses. They've converted a lot of the houses, like the Main Street is here, then you come around the bend and there's another street, and that's a lot of little houses that were converted into shops. If you go up to Newport, Rhode Island, I mean, their whole waterfront was developed in such a way that it looks like a whole bunch of little old houses combined. You know, I mean, that is what I love, not a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot building, new building at the entrance of our community.
but if I may, on the other hand, and I'm sorry, but you don't want to make and again, I think you don't want to make the shop so small that all you have is people selling trinkets. That's why I talk about a low-end retail ghetto. You don't want to encourage that either.
Right.
So
Well,
you have
that's
to be
why I
careful.
don't really think, I'm ready for this.
You know, I
don't think
understand,
we're
but
ready
I think
for this.
maybe, just taking a step back, maybe you want to look at how you can encourage some of the existing non-conforming uses to develop. I often think of that Clam Man, and I guess it's like a neat place there as well. If you could incentivize them to do something. I mean, I don't know if the parking works or whatever, but you know, that would be nice. And again, they're not a client of mine, but I
Yeah.
do want to try to see what can happen.
Okay. All right, thanks. Anyone else from the board want to
Thank you.
comment in reference to this? Okay, so we're going to close the public hearing
Do you
on
want
this.
to read those letters
Well,
into the record? Do they want to be read into the
That was
record?
out for last meeting, that's just the leftovers.
okay.
Do they work? Because I saw a friend of mine in there that I think I've read into the record. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3. Were they left over from the last meeting? I guess they were. Sorry about that. Let's see.
So, I think that we've got enough information here. People make a decision one way or the other. So I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on the North Sea rezoning.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll read your information and absorb the process, and then we'll come back at the next board meeting and stuff, so.
Just a reminder.
Yep.
The public hearing is closed, you've got the Suffolk County Planning Commission approvals, but you're not in a position, at this point, you are in a position to say no if you decide not to proceed with it. You're not in a position to say yes yet, because before you could vote to approve this as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, we would need, the environmental assessment from Nelson Pope and Voorhees. I don't know whether they've begun work on that or whether they're waiting to see if you want them to go ahead with that before that expense is incurred. I'm not sure, but I haven't seen anything in the way of an environmental assessment yet.
No, they haven't done any, we haven't asked them to do any of that stuff, so.
Probably going to be of some substantial expense.
Okay. So we'll come back at the next board meeting.
So,
Yeah.
if you're leaning toward going ahead with it, then you can tell Nelson Pope to start working on that assessment.
Okay.
If you're not in favor of going ahead in it, you can end it.
Okay.
If you do end it and you decide not to go forward with it, you might want to think about asking the planning commission or whatever to take a look at, are there any kinds of uses that could be added to that, to, you know, as allowed uses or special exception uses or special permit uses in that OD district. I mean, the problem with the district right now is that there's really nothing that's permitted, not much that's a permitted use other than office business use. So that's an inherent problem in the nature of the zone, if there is no demand for office use out there. The other problem with the district is that there are a lot of pre-existing uses, pre-existing retail type uses. That doesn't mean you should go with this plan if you don't want to, but you might want to think about, or ask the planning commission to take a look at whether they have any thoughts on some additional kinds of uses other than, you know, your general retail that might work in this district. It probably is a pretty outdated code in terms of what's allowed.
Yeah, it's,
I don't have any suggestions for what might be. I think what probably initiated this study was the fact that there isn't really much that's permitted in that OD zone other than office. And a feeling by some that there's not a demand for office use.
yeah, the permitted uses in the village office district include business, utility, and professional offices, offices of licensed healthcare professionals, medical arts facilities, accessory home professional offices and legally existing residents, banks, funeral homes, mortuaries, chapels, parks, playgrounds, and other recreational facilities when operated or authorized by the village, libraries, museums, and agriculture with the exception of animal husbandry. And those are the permitted uses in there. So, which is really not much. That's the, so,
That's the main thing
yeah,
they're talking about.
that's the problem. So, and that's why I think that, you know, if we study this a little bit more and you think about it, and maybe there's, do we want to restrict, maybe it's scaring you is the size of the building, or the,
Number
or
of
having.
things. I think the suggested size is very large.
Right.
I think the competition within an already struggling village business district, and I think traffic, and not all necessarily in that order.
I mean, if you think in terms of the pre-existing non-conforming uses in there, maybe there's an incentive program that we can put in place that would, it would help them out in the redevelopment or the expansion of their property. I mean, it's, the Claremont property is a perfect example of that. I mean, it's really,
Well, the Claremont property is a perfect example because it's a very visual property.
yeah.
And, you know, it's, I could see where that would be redeveloped.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they want to redevelop it, but who knows if they want to keep it
They
up
don't
there.
own it.
Oh, they don't own it? I
No.
thought they did own it.
No.
So,
So, yeah, so there's, but, you know, that's a perfect example of
right.
a redevelopment opportunity in a highly visible area that is an entrance to the village of Southampton.
Well, that would be a good concept to review those, because you also have the eyeglass place.
Right.
And, you know, you're looking at expanding his business or what he can do, and there's a number of pre-existing retail places, Tate's and so forth, that I'm sure would like to expand and possibly change the facade of their buildings. And you could,
It's such a beautiful building.
well, Tate's is,
Yeah.
right, yeah, but some of the others
Yeah.
aren't so attractive.
Yeah, so I think that, I think there's an opportunity here to do some things. Like the Tate's building, I'd hate to see change. Which is Garden Center, you'd hate to see change. Even the Smiths, you'd hate to see change and so, but there are other opportunities around that you may wanna, the
But
Gold
the
Coast
garden
Bank
center is a very large property.
Yeah,
And, if you do something like this, it could benefit them to not be there anymore and move to another location.
I don't know about that, so.
No,
I mean,
but I'm
it-
just saying,
yeah.
you don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, they could move to Sandy Hollow Road for all we know, and be able to do something over there. Sandy Hollow Road and have their garden center over there, and that could become redeveloped. It's a very large property there. You'll put a lot of money in their pocket, and, people make decisions that, somehow you can't even imagine that they would ever do that, but they do it. And then we're with a very large property that could be redeveloped. So that's, those are things that we have to think
Yeah.
about.
I agree, so.
And that's retail right now, so
The retail world is changing rapidly, so.
it is, and
Yeah,
that's,
with Amazon and Amazon
yeah, it's
Prime,
true.
so, all right, so study this, come back and the next meeting and make a decision one way or the other. I mean, if it's a no, then obviously it's a no. If it's a yes, then there's other steps that we have to do before we can actually vote yes on it, so.
Well, could it be a no, and then could we send it to the,
Well, we can always send it back to the planning commission,
Yeah.
to the village planning commission with some recommendations on things that we'd like to see. So remember, this is the village business district, this is the village master plan update is what this is. And if we want to make changes to it, we can send it back to them. And we'd have to go back through the public hearing process, because we would be making changes to the master plan that we have published at this point in time. If we want to tighten up on some things, like certain uses placed in there those are all things that we can do based upon feedback that we have. We can send it back to the planning commission for them to actually reevaluate.
well, if we send it back to the planning commission, and then we have to open up the hearings again, I think that's the fair thing to do. Because if we send it back to the planning commission with a couple of things like saying, well, what could we do for those businesses that are there to give them, a little more expansion, then the public hearing should be back open again to the public so that they can come in and see how we can ask the public how they feel about that.
Yeah, it's
It's
part
the
of
right
the process.
thing. Okay,
Well,
right, yeah,
it's the
right.
process, we
Okay,
have to do.
okay,
There's
all
no ifs, ands, or buts about it, so,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. So, we got a motion and a second?
Yep, all in favor?
All in favor? Okay, there we go. Okay.
No communications to the board. Resolutions, item 1, resolve the reading of the minutes for public session September 8th, 2016, be dispensed with. Those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator. The actions taken at that meeting be and hereby are ratified in the village. Got a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 2, resolve the claims for the warrant dated September 20th, 2016, for $403,586.84, warrant 6 general fund, and the village payroll for the period ending September 15th, 2016, be ordered and approved. Got a motion?
Motion.
Second? Second. Discussion. Page 1, Agua Video, balance for the video camera system in the boardroom, $4,284.72. Cast Productions, video services from Webb Works, going out to page 2, $1,867.50. Code 20 graphics, fire department safety vest, $2,060. East Coast Mines and Materials, dumping fees for the highway, $3,420. Eastern Locksmiths, locks and door strikes for the building department, $1,031.80. EMT Governmental Accounting Services for August, $1,218.75. Firematic Supply pumper repairs, $1,051.67. Firematic Supply on page 3,
hook and ladder repair, $7,722.65. First Presbyterian Church, October lease parking, $3,000. Fundamental court services, August collection fees, $7,344. Wilton Montello, 2,000 gallons of diesel fuel, $2,987. Herman Cass, Pangani and Klein, Society Settlement, page 4, $6,380. Johnson Electrical Construction, traffic signal maintenance for August, $1,350. Page 5, more medical supplies for the ambulance, $1,287.23. MTC Security Fire Department Controller, repair, $1,061.63. Norsec and Son, Cooper's Carting, $2,604.95. Page 6, Norsec Carting for the Highway Department, $2,580. New York State Employees Health Insurance for October, $269,693.06. Page 7, PSENG for electric services for the Fire Department, $6,162.45. For PD, $5,088.520. Page 8 for streetlights, $5,504.41. Page 9, Sadie Levine, first installment for the 2016 audit, $9,500. Sprague Operating Reserve, 2,000 gallons of gasoline, $3,091.80. Squires Holden, surveying of the lettered roads down by the beach, $2,400. Page 10, Suffolk County Water Authority, Parks Water Bill, $2,143.30. Press Newspaper Group, payment towards the September Fest graphic services, $2,500. Vince Toomey, legal fees for August, $10,501.16. Town of Southampton, carding for the Highway Department, $2,562.20. Trias Inc., sweep parts repairs, $3,205. Verizon phone bill for August, $3,715. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to skip item 3 for discussion during executive session. Item 4, resolve that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the Southampton Village Justice Court to file a grant application for the 2016 Justice Court Assistance Program, JCAP, in the maximum amount of $4,320 for the purpose of upgrading their computer system. Have a motion?
Get a motion.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 4, resolve that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following capital reserve transfer, $25,000 into the office equipment reserve from the fire and the facilities reserve. Got a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And last one, resolve the Board of Trustees hereby approves the attached schedule of budget transfers to the May overages for the period ending September 20th, 2016. Have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second. Discussion. Item 1, 3,000 for police contractual, 1,000 for police equipment, 2,000 for police miscellaneous. Item 2, 3,000 out of park supplies, going into parks equipment. And 3 is 2,000 out of Cooper's Beach salary that's reversed into Cooper's Beach overtime. All in favor?
Aye. Okay, we don't have any discussion items here, so comments from board members and trustee Yaz.
Go Sox.
Okay. Trustee Irvin.
All right, we got some great exciting stuff coming up this weekend.
Yeah, we do, yes.
I mean, Septemberfest
Friday.
is really a happening thing, and, you know, I think we should thank Steve for all his efforts with it.
Really?
Julie too, because it's a big, big help for our business district. There's no question about it. It brings in a large group of people. And, you know, most of them are all good people.
So like half the people coming?
Starting to sound like Donald Trump.
Yeah. The clam chowder contest is
No, it's great, isn't it?
is the best,
Oh, yeah. It is. It's a get in early.
you know?
Yeah,
That's right.
I mean,
Goes
I
fast.
usually, I work every single weekend, Saturday and Sunday, but you know what? I'm gonna try to be there Saturday.
Nice.
Yeah. That's good.
You want us to save you some chowder?
Yeah.
Nancy?
I just wanted to bring up one thing that the Suffolk County Planning Commission is reviewing the Tuckahoe supermarket application, and it was originally supposed to be on October 5th in Riverhead, I think at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's been changed. It is now October 11th. and it's in Riverhead at 10 a.m. So for those people who have an interest in that, and would like to stand before the Suffolk County Planning Commission and say what they'd like to say, they should be over in Riverhead at 10 a.m. on October 11th.
Bill?
An inquiry from a dear friend of mine recently, and they told me to get down and by Bowden Square, there's that triangular piece of land. Does the village own that piece of land?
Yes.
By any chance?
Yeah.
And that statue that's on the land, what is that?
So,
What is that?
people dancing in a field.
Ah,
I've heard other things,
yeah,
but
well, no?
Well, I've heard a few things too.
I've heard several things.
My sister never danced like that again. People dancing, enough said, thank you.
It was a gift to the village.
Yeah.
I can't wait to call her. So remind me.
Can you record that conversation? I wanna know how that goes.
I've had a few of those conversations myself.
Actually, yes, when you
I
mentioned,
never
yes,
noticed it
I've had
myself.
several of those, and a lot of them actually occurred on the 4th of July parade.
Yeah.
Come to mention, people that were sitting in front of it asked questions very much similar to what Bill just said there. A little stronger though with their comments, you know.
Yeah, so, yeah, like Michael said, this weekend, Septemberfest, it starts Friday night with New Life Crisis and the Rotary and their fundraiser down at the park, and all day long we've got music and a lot of activities on Saturday, and then Sunday is a whole day full of events that are going on, so it's a great weekend, and you know, I want to second what Michael said in reference to Steve and Julie and the team that you have working together, and it's a lot of hard work, and you guys have done a great job. And
Don't forget Charles Adams.
oh yeah, well, I was going to say that yeah, at the Southampton Arts Center starts the exhibit of Charles Adams and the Adams family, and to follow up will be the haunted house, and at the end of October at the site, and it's great, you know, and the following weekend's the Hamptons Marathon, which is going to be draw a lot of people to the village of Southampton, and there'll be some traffic congestion and stuff, but we ask people to just be patient, and but it's really will pull a lot of people over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday timeframe, where it should be a boost to the merchants. And then the next weekend after that is the Hamptons International Film Festival, which will attract people from all over the place. So, you know, one of our goals has been to work on the shoulder seasons and how do you pull people into the East End, especially the village, and attract them and to come out here. And I think that we're starting to see that from the muster to Septemberfest to the marathon to the film festival. It's really kind of extending the summer season and pulling people out to help the merchants and stuff. So hoping that it works, and I think it will. So we can come up with some other ideas to pull people in that bill.
I'm a great admirer of your cartoonist. And somewhere when I left my previous life and moved on, I must have left my cartoon road coat days. And it was a great cartoon, and I think of Donald Trump very often with this cartoon, but it shows a very dignified man, about 70 and a half, and there's a sign on the wall that says psychiatrist's office, you know, and the psychiatrist is sitting next to him. He's lying down on this couch, and he said, well, tell me about yourself. And the old man says, well, in the beginning I created the heavens and the earth. And if you see that cartoon, I'm dying to get a
Okay.
copy of it.
Actually, they had that on the wall.
Did they?
Yeah, they have all of the, they have all of the
Used to do
drawings.
stuff in
When
New Yorker
when he
before
was
he
here
did, yeah.
before, that was one of them.
I have a book in my office from the last exhibit we had, so.
It might be in there.
Might be.
I've got one of my children. I was raving about him, and they bought me a book of his cartoons, and they're great, but that one's not in there, but I
Yeah, I have a book in my office, it was
I love
from
that.
the exhibit we did 2 years ago.
Beginning.
It might be in there. Yeah.
When you said you were raving about him, I was thinking that couldn't have been Trout. I thought maybe that's who you were raving about for Bill.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and then
I
finally,
don't
I
suffer from
wanted to
that
say,
problem.
yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, we need to start working on development of park plans for
Yes.
Moses. And then also, I know that we're going in front of the town board also to get approval for the demolition of the Dozier property
Good.
from CPF funds to help us with that. So I think that we need to start working on a master plan for that park,
I'd love
which
to
I
do that,
think includes opening the wall up
Right.
along there, you know, and.
I don't want to take the wall down, but we could open it.
But if we use, I think there's a whole repointing or restoration of that wall that needs to occur.
That's true.
If we look at the Job's Lane wall and the 25 Job's Lane property right there, and really the magnificent job that was done there, and really I think how that enhanced that entire piece of property.
Absolutely.
If we take that same approach here and go and say, we want to do this to this wall, and kind of merge the two pieces, I
Right.
think I think there's a lot of things that can be done. You know, I know that one of the issues that we do have in that area is the upgrade of the restrooms. And I know that, you know, we need to think in terms of how we're gonna do that. We've looked at a few different things along there, but those are projects I think we need to work on in the next several months. And if you guys go down and look at it and think of ideas, things that we'd like to see inside the park. I'd personally like to see the children's playground kind of expanded.
I
It's
would
one of
think
the,
too.
it's one of the big attractions to the entire village from people from all
It's a
over.
huge attraction.
And then maybe there's other, you know, uses on that property that might be good for it and stuff. So,
And it'd be nice to see Moses Lane property go more recreation, because it would be nice to give that to the people of the village.
yeah, it really would be.
Right.
And having tennis courts out there.
Tennis courts,
and
maybe jogging lanes, and, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Pickleball, whatever it's called.
okay.
So I guess that's new to you.
Yeah, it's new to me, so.
It's a very
We're going all over the
It's
place.
growing.
It's really big.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what
Who knew?
They have one, but
No, you never heard
The
that?
Meadow Club.
Yes.
Riverhead is all over that.
Wow,
It's like tennis, but just on a much smaller court, you know.
okay.
It's like paddle tennis.
The use
so
of
it's-
rain and everything else.
So,
Yeah, it's really
You
good.
can be in your dotage and still play this.
Thanks. Oh,
anyway,
good.
it's
Good.
taken off. Who knew?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, those are, but I mean, I would never even thought, you know, so,
Well, Riverhead just did it. That's
yeah, so I
To the,
think,
to the
yeah, there's
chagrin of
some,
their youth and their skating
there's
parks.
some pieces to that, I think that, you know, we should look at, and I think it's a great opportunity, so, yeah, okay.
It's good.
So, that being said, anyone else from the public would like to speak? Okay, and so I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing, to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personal matters.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.